I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a returned guest by a guy who has his own website, libertysentinel.org. He founded it himself. He's a conservative. He's a Christian. He also is a foreign correspondent with the New American. I'm talking about Alex Newman. Hello, Newman. And I say
How's
that
it
with
going,
all
Greg?
love and appreciation. You know, the old Seinfeld thing. Newman.
Absolutely. Hey, I
Anyway,
appreciate you having me on.
I
Thank you,
love
Greg.
having you on, buddy. You're on a speaking trip. I want to leverage. I told you this in the pre-interview. I want to leverage this. You're going around the country. One of your pet things, your big issues is not just a pet thing. It's a big issue. Is about education and the communist indoctrination in public schools. And you're going around and speaking about that. You've had as many as 600 people come to see you speak, and you're going around the country. Tell me about your speaking tour, and what's the flavor, what's the feel of America right now about what Donald Trump is doing with the border security?
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of fun. We've been on the road now for over 3 months, done over 50 speaking engagements across 30 something states so far. It's been absolutely fantastic. And what I'm really showing parents, and in fact, I don't even really give them my opinion until the very end. I'm just showing what's happening in the public school system and what the implications are. Essentially, if we continue to allow the government to indoctrinate and dumb down 87% of our children, unless there's some kind of miracle, you can kiss your liberties, you can kiss your country goodbye. We're going to lose them. Now we're moving toward this global education system. And so I'm really urging parents, pay attention, guys. I know nobody wants to hear this, but the reality is, and you can use the government's own data to show this, they're turning your kids into brain dead, brainwashed zombies ready to burn down the country, burn down your church, and burn down your family. And so I'm trying to warn parents, get your kids into the safe sanctuary of home schools, of Christian schools, private schools, Jewish schools, whatever your thing is. Just make sure they're getting a decent, God-centered, proper education where at least they'll learn the basics, how to read, write, and do math, those fundamental things that will allow these children to then go educate themselves in the future. So that's what I'm doing. And as part of this, I'm meeting amazing people all over the country, legislators and all this. And, you mentioned Trump's border security. And I've had a lot of Hispanics coming to these meetings, people who were, born and raised in Mexico or Central America, who say, hey, we like Trump. We support what he's doing. CNN is total fake news. They say that all Hispanics, all Latin Americans, all immigrants hate Trump and think he's some kind of monster. That's simply not true. In my experience going across the country, I have met countless people from all different backgrounds, from all different national origins and ethnicities who say, Trump is doing the right thing on border security. We support that. We want the border enforced, and so on.
And that kind of backs up. It does. You think it largely backs up what the recent Harvard poll, which was like almost 70% of blacks and Latinos will vote for a candidate who is, anti-illegal immigration, this or asylum seeking. Now they're trying to call it asylum, which is all crap. It's just they're just flooding the country. Do you think that what your experience is backing up with the Harvard poll, which it's got to be scaring the daylights out of CNN, LOL, and MSNBC and CNBC and all these other ones?
Absolutely. In fact, I haven't met any people, any Hispanics on this trip so far who are opposed to these things. In fact, people, I'm married to an immigrant, interestingly enough, and almost to a man, these people, they tried to come in legally. They did the right thing. They did the paperwork. They waited in line. They paid the fees, and then to have these people come in and abuse the asylum system and say, oh yeah, there's a gang in my country, and so I need asylum in America, or just cross the border illegally and just disappear. People don't like that. People who came here the right way, who obeyed the law, don't like that. It's like getting spat on in the face. People don't support that. And when you go out and talk to people, shut off the fake news.
And you're
When you go
talking
out and
about when you
talk,
say people don't like it, you're saying that, I mean, you're in Texas now. You're saying that Hispanic Americans are saying, hey, Dad, we don't want that. We don't want
that's
illegal.
That's exactly right. In fact, I have a good friend, Amapola Hansberger, who came from Central America. Now she runs the group Legal Immigrants for America. And there's countless legal immigrants from Latin America who share the Americanist point of view, who want the rule of law enforced, who want the border secured, who want people to come here the right way. And if you turn off the TV and you go out and actually talk to real people, that's what you will find. There's isolated pockets. There's certainly parts of Southern California where the certain communities down there have been indoctrinated to believe that America stole this land from Mexico. I was raised in Mexico. I went to school down there, and they taught me all that. The evil Yankees came and stole our land, and so you have a small fringe of people who believe that stuff. But CNN and the fake news want to act like that's all Latin American immigrants. That's all immigrants in America. And that's simply a fraud. It's a total fraud. And the polling data shows that, just anecdotal evidence interacting with real people shows that. And so, I think you just need to shut off the fake news, go out there in the real world, and you'll see what's going on.
UN, you've done a lot. You're a foreign correspondent, so you do a lot about the UN. And the UN is barking. One of your latest pieces that, let me pull it up here. One of your latest pieces says, UN to America, open borders and kill more babies. I know that's a pretty kind of a crude title, but a true title it is it not?
That's exactly what the UN is saying. And the high-level officials are saying this stuff. So a few months ago, when Alabama and some of these other states were passing legislation to restrict the killing of unborn babies, the UN human rights apparatus sprang into action. And they said, oh, you have a human right to kill your babies. How dare these states pass laws restricting or regulating the killing of babies? You're violating people's human rights. Very ironically, in a grotesque kind of way, they said, oh, this is going to disproportionately impact minority women. And, that's true, right? Because they are slaughtering more, black and Hispanic children than white children. So it's true it will disproportionately affect them, but in the most absurd kind of way. And then on the border, you have the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Giraldi, I think is his name. And he said that we're deeply concerned about these policies that the Trump administration is pursuing, trying to bring the influx of Central Americans into the United States, abusing the asylum process under control. He said Trump wants to cut that off. You can't just say, well, hey, there's a gang in my country, and so I get to come here, or hey, my husband's not nice, so I get to move to America. And Trump is trying to get that under control, and the UN is saying, no, you're not allowed to do that, right? He actually expressed concern that a majority of asylum applications might be rejected. And so what he's saying is the majority of asylum applications need to be accepted when we know for a fact that there are countless people who are abusing this system. This system was created for people who are being, persecuted by their own government for speaking out against something. This is not for, hey, I live in a violent neighborhood, and so I need to have automatic instant access to the United States and to your welfare benefits. That's crazy. And Trump is trying to bring some common sense back into this. But I think what's even more disturbing, Greg, is that we now have this wannabe global government, this collection of gangsters and mass murderers and cutthroats and genocidal lunatics, barking orders at the United States as if we were just some administrative province in the New World Order. That's not how this is supposed to work, right? The UN is, at least in the public mind, supposed to be just this organization where we can have discussions, maybe help promote peace, so whether we can talk to each other instead of going to war. Of course, that wasn't the real reason why they set it up, but at least in the public imagination, that's what it's for. And yet here they are barking orders at the United States government, which funds the vast majority of their programs. In fact, we pay more than many of the other countries combined. In some cases, we pay 30%, even 50% of the UN's budget or the different UN agencies. And here they are treating us like we're some sort of subservient vassal state. And during Obama, I could understand that, but I wish Trump would just tell them, enough of that. He has done a very good job of getting us out of some of these UN agencies, but it's unacceptable to have these people talk to us like this.
People a lot say that he's a globalist. He's part of the New World Order. Wow, got us out of the Paris Climate Accord, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Also got us out of what else? This Iran.
UNESCO. That for me, that's a huge one, Greg. I'm going around the country right now showing people what UNESCO is doing. Last year UNESCO put out global sex education standards. They want 5-year-olds, 9-year-olds to know things that we can't even discuss in any company, much less on this YouTube video. And that's crazy, right? So you have this agency.
What is UNESCO? United Nations what?
The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And this was actually created for the purpose of brainwashing humanity's children to bring about what the first founder, the first Secretary General, Director General, Julian Huxley, said would be political unification in some sort of world government. And they've been on this mission ever since. They've got now what they call a world core curriculum, Greg. And just to give people a hint about what this World Core curriculum is all about, it was developed by an Assistant Secretary General of the UN. He said it ought to be taught in every school on this planet. And he wrote a teacher's manual for this. And if you read the foreword, he says the underlying philosophy upon which it's all based will be found in the teachings of Alice Bailey in these books. Of course, anybody who knows about Alice Bailey, which all the leadership of the UN knows exactly who she is, she's the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company. No joke. Right now they call it the Lucius Trust, but they believe the same stuff. And so these are dangerous people. These are dangerous institutions. And Trump has done humanity an enormous service by getting the United States out of UNESCO, by defunding this gangster organization. Just until last year, it was literally run by a communist, Irina Bokova, who hates my guts, by the way, but that makes me smile. But just it's crazy, Greg. It's absolutely crazy. And Trump has done the right thing by getting us out of these organizations.
And people don't really understand how evil there is a new world order. There are people who want to take over America. That's what's going on, right? Is America at war with the new world order that want to destroy America?
Well, unfortunately, we have a subversive fifth column in the United States that is working with these New World Order people. And, if you go to some of the fake news, they'll say, oh, anyone who talks about a New World Order is a conspiracy theorist. There's no need for theorizing, right? I mean, just go back to 1991. George H.W. Bush went on national television. He told us exactly what was happening. We're going to have the rule of law will govern the conduct of nations. Therefore, we're talking about global rule of law. He said, when we are successful, and we will be, we're going to have a New World Order in which a credible United Nations will use its peacekeeping role, by which he means its military forces. I mean, these are some monsters if you ever saw some. Just in the last 10 years, they've raped about 60,000 women and children. And that's according to Hear Their Cries, a network of former UN officials, UN investigators who used the UN's own data to come up with these estimates. And then we're going to implement, Bush said, the vision and the promise of the UN's founders. And, we know who they were too, right? Joseph Stalin on one side of the table and his minions. We sent a guy, Alger Hiss, who later we threw him in prison because he was working for Joseph Stalin. So why we would give up the vision of our founding fathers for this crazy new world order that these globalists talk about. And, Biden talks about it, Clinton talks about it, Obama talks about it, Tony Blair, David Cameron. All these world leaders have been telling it. George Soros said communist China should own the new world order. So there very much is a plan to create a global system. They've been telling us about it for years. And, unless you're glued to the fake news, you probably already know this, right? And of course, the crucial weapon in bringing this all about, Greg, and they're telling us this, is the public school system. They got 87% of our kids. They're brainwashing them to accept this future for themselves and for their children. And so that's where we have to do battle, right? We have to realize that they've got our kids. If we want to stop them, we have to take our kids back.
And you've got 5 kids?
4 now. Yep.
Four kids, married to an immigrant, Hispanic, I guess. Nope. I'm married to overseas.
I grew up in Latin
Europe.
That's
You
right,
grew up
yep.
in Latin America. Yes. What kind of a battle do you see we're in right now? Are we winning? Are we making some headway? I mean, Trump was the game changer. Are we making some headway in this battle?
I think we are. In fact, I think the election of Donald Trump shows how much headway we've made into this battle. Donald Trump ran on an anti-globalist platform. He made fun of the UN. He said it was no friend of freedom, and talked about it as if it was a dictator's club, and it is. He talked about the man-made global warming hoax being a hoax by the communist Chinese. He talked about the need to shrink government. He talked about the need to secure the border. I mean, these are all policy positions that are abhorrent to the New World Order crowd, right? The ones that want to abolish nations and get rid of private property rights, at least for us, right, not for themselves, that want to undermine the family unit, that want to undermine marriage. So Trump really ran on a pro-America, pro-freedom platform. And despite all of the media being opposed to him, he won, right? And so I think that shows that we have made tremendous progress. That shows that even with all the establishment's propaganda machine arrayed against the American people, we still have enough Americans who recognize what needs to happen that we can do this. And so, I think the globalists are a little bit nervous, in fact, maybe a lot nervous, not necessarily because of anything that's happened, but because they now realize, and they realize that we realize, that the American people still have the means and the will to resist this totalitarian agenda. I think that frightens them.
The do no evil people have been called out by Project Veritas, and being you're a journalist, I figure, and you're, your fingers on the pulse of the New World Order. That's really just an arm of the New World Order, right? I mean, they were trying to rig the elections.
Yeah,
And
in fact,
while they're telling us, well, we're not doing that.
right. And one of the quotes from one of the guys who defected and who blew the whistle said they were trying to overthrow the United States. I mean, they're in bed with the communist Chinese, helping their artificial intelligence programs. And this is serious. This is a national security issue now when you have this major international corporation in bed with the globalists. Eric Schmidt, the guy who ran Google for many years, he was always at these Bilderberg meetings, always running around with these globalists. And a lot of these big technology companies, people don't realize they've been tied to the deep state, to the establishment from day one. DARPA has been involved in financing some of these, InQtel, right, the intelligence community's investment arm. So there's all these nefarious connections. And now we know Google is trying to rig our elections. Google is manipulating our search engine results. And we know this from documents that have come out, right? If you go to Project Veritas's website, you can read these documents for yourself. You can hear the testimony of the people who have come out of these corrupt companies. So, we have a very serious problem on our hands. I'm delighted to know that Donald Trump is looking at this. He's even, talked about executive orders and different things that the federal government can do. We've got to get this problem under control because it's another one of those existential crises. Trump seems to be doing a pretty good job, in my opinion, of focusing on the existential threats to America. Communist China is obviously one of those. Open borders is another. Google and these big technology companies that are determined to silence conservatives, to silence Christians, to silence people who have any point of view disagreements with the New World Order, even on the left. Even liberals have been being censored now if they disagree with key elements of the narrative. And I wish he would spend a little bit more time on education, because I think that's another one of the existential threats we're facing. And of course, globalism. He's gotten us out of at least half a dozen, maybe a dozen UN agencies and agreements that were crucial for moving us toward this new world order. So I think Trump is being very strategic on what he's focusing on. I'm very pleased with it. A little bit disappointed on a number of issues. I wouldn't have signed that monstrous budget, but I think he is very focused on these key issues that we need to be looking at, and I hope we can make more progress on these.
The New York Times was exposed. I mean, this is, New York Times. The USA Today. These papers, that act like they're some bastion of journalism with a big J. And the New York Times gets outed by somebody. They got one guy in the newsroom standing up, hollering out to everybody, "We're not part of the resistance." Wow, a journalist. And then another outing saying they need to change the narrative. They need to go from the fake Russia collusion hoax, which people are going to hopefully pay the price for that, now to racist. You're a racist. And I guess we're back to they're scared to death. They got to call Donald Trump a racist because you got all these blacks and Latinos that there may even be a majority that will vote for Donald Trump because they don't like the illegal immigration and the asylum abusers. The New York Times, they're just a propaganda machine, right? Isn't it just the mainstream media propaganda?
It's funny you use that term, because actually a few years ago, one of their reporters resigned. He called the New York Times a propaganda megaphone for war, for the establishment. He says they amplify these lies to get the establishment's way. And you're right. This racism narrative involving Trump is so ludicrous. Just last night, August 18th, Trump retweeted a black friend of mine 3 times, Dr. Oliver McGee, who used to be the Assistant Secretary of Transportation under the Clinton administration. He woke up under Obama. All this different stuff about Trump's relationship with the black community in America. In fact, more and more black Americans are realizing they've been sold a bill of goods by the Democrat Party. More and more white Americans are realizing that. More and more Hispanic Americans are realizing that. And they're realizing, too, that the establishment has tried to keep us divided. Oh, you guys are black, so you guys have your own interests. And you guys have less melanin, so you have your own interests. And you guys are Hispanics. That's baloney oil. First of all, we're all human beings. Second of all, we are all Americans. And that is what we need to be focused on. That is what unites us. And the Democrat Party and more broadly the globalist establishment, the deep state, are petrified that this narrative won't work anymore. What happens if people suddenly realize that, wait a minute, my interests are not defined by the amount of melanin I have in my skin, right? What happens then? Oh my goodness, everybody leaves the plantation, and then what are they left with? A bunch of angry Americans ready to break out the metaphorical tar and feathers and find these animals who've been tearing down our country, tearing down our political institutions, destroying our children mentally, spiritually, academically, and trying to undermine our nation and our freedom. Hey, there's going to be big problems at that point. So the polling data, I think, is very encouraging. Americans are waking up to this scam. Americans of all different backgrounds, and I think it has them very, very nervous.
What do you think handicap Trump the election of 2020? Economy is, I mean, we're the best economy in the world. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, I'm not an anti-Trumper, but I am worried about all the debt.
I am too.
I'm worried about the debt. I mean, I'm worried about there's something has to be. People, I think that well, Donald Trump will fix everything. Well, he may, but there may be some real pain on the way to fixing it. I mean, America's best days are ahead. I think so too. But I mean, God's going to save America, not your 401k. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I agree, Greg. And I'm very concerned about that too. In fact, I've been concerned about this almost right from the start. When Donald Trump won the election, it was very obvious to me that the establishment was not pleased. And there's very smart analysts out there who I think highly of, people like Brandon Smith, who are promoting the idea that somehow Trump is involved with the deep state, that he is actually getting ready to take the fall for this major economic crash. I don't share that point of view. I could see how someone could arrive at that conclusion. A reasonable person could arrive at that conclusion. But I think what's more likely is we may see the globalists try to crash the economy, whether that be pull the rug out from under the stock market, or whether that be trying to crash the value of the dollar, and then using that as a springboard to demonize President Trump, all of his supporters, to basically say, hey, see what happens when you defy globalism. See what happens when you try to, implement tariffs so that the communist Chinese don't rip you off. You end up blowing up your own economy. And, now what do we do? And look, this is all Trump's fault. This is all the fault of American voters. I think that is a very real possibility. And I think Trump has done the smart thing. Trump has been talking about the role of the Federal Reserve and manipulating. In fact, he's been doing this since the campaign trail in 2016, talking about how the Federal Reserve juices the economy and then brings it back down. I think that's exactly what he needs to be doing, because once the American people understand the monetary system, it's game over for the globalists. And so if they crash the economy, Trump can use his bully pulpit to explain what's really going on here. But I do think there's a real risk, and I think the globalists have thought about this, and I think we need to be on guard, because if they crash the economy and if they can control the narrative, we may end up in a serious pickle. So we have to be on guard for that.
well, you know what? I'll tell you, I'm going to back you up on here. I got this, and because I use it, refer to it often. Here's the executive order. I'll pick it, go full screen. Blocking the property of persons involved in human rights trafficking, abuse, or corruption. Look what it says right here in the December 21st, 2017. Protect the financial system of the United States, a national emergency to deal with that threat. This was the executive order that's still in force on December 21st, 2017. So, what you're talking about is not something that the president hasn't thought about, and he thought about it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I hope he will take serious action, because we're not dealing with people who we have a legitimate disagreement of opinion with. We're dealing with people who actually are nefarious, who have evil intentions, who would very much like to destroy liberty, who would very much like to destroy our country and merge it into a global system with them at the top. And they use ruthless means. We know they use ruthless means. They've been doing it for a very long time. They have no scruples at all about lying, cheating. I mean, turn on CNN, for crying out loud, right? They don't mind lying to you. They don't mind robbing you. In fact, they probably wouldn't mind killing you. And so we need to be aware that we're dealing with some very nefarious characters, some very nasty characters, and we need to proceed with that understanding. Because if you go in without understanding your enemy, Sun Tzu pointed this out, right? If you understand yourself and you understand your enemy, you will win every battle. You got nothing to worry about. So It's not enough just to understand who we are as Americans, our amazing heritage of freedom, of God-given rights, of free political institutions, of free markets. We also need to understand who wants to destroy that. We need to understand the enemy. And, at some level, it's a spiritual battle. We've talked about this, Greg. God tells us in Ephesians 6:12, we're dealing with powers and principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places, right? The rulers of the darkness of this world. But we need to understand also the physical component of it in this reality. We're dealing with people who are absolutely evil and who wouldn't hesitate to do any illegal or immoral thing if it would advance their agenda and if they thought they could do it without getting caught and without getting in trouble. And so, I think Trump comes out of a background where he has an understanding of this. His dad, even his chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, has a pretty decent understanding of these things, especially as far as Washington goes. And that, I think, is very encouraging. At least it's encouraging to me.
Your tour, you've got a few weeks left. It's your website is libertysentinel.org or libertysentinel.org. Let me make sure I get this right.
It's libertysentinel.org, and then
Okay.
people can find the tour at libertysentinel.org/tour. And if people want to see the kind of basis for this, Greg, we put out a special report in the New American Magazine on February 4th. We basically cover everything going on in the public school system in the first 2/3, the dumbing down, the indoctrination, the sexualization, and then the last third we talk about the solutions. And you can get that at thenewamerican.com/rescuing our children. We're trying to get 1 million copies of that out, and part of that effort is the speaking
Send me
tour.
the link. I'll put it up.
Awesome. I will be happy to do that.
Send me the link for that. Send me the link for your speaking tour. You got another couple of weeks left. I want to hit this for you right at the top of, you are a foreign correspondent for the New American, but you also have your own website, which is libertysentinel.org. And right at the top, if you look, you have highlights, speaking. That's where you'll find the where you're speaking at engagement. Speaking engagements, got that. Right at the top, so you'll find that. Just give you a little, thing, a little tutelage, and then there's a donate and contact. Donate. So I was the one that actually told you to put a donate button on there because we need you to make it. We need you to survive with your family and your wife and 4 kids. Which, incidentally, your wife and 4 kids are along with you on this trip, right?
They are. It's been so much
So-
fun. We got a trailer, and we've been touring the country, having a blast, and meeting amazing people, and sounding the alarm about what's happening in the public school system.
So people need to support you by going to libertysentinel.org and also hitting that donation button. And Alex Newman, you are the foreign correspondent also for The New American, a lovely publication. You'll send me the links. For you folks on YouTube, it'll be click back to all links are found on usawatchdog.com and look at the after the interview section. I'll put all the links in there, including your donation button. Alex Newman, thank you for joining us today
Thank
on
you
USA
so much
Watchdog.
for having me, Greg.
Thank
is
you.
always
Thank
a pleasure.
You give me hope that the next generation, because you're only in your early 30s, you give me hope that we're not done. That we actually have some smart young people, and many more than just you two. We do have smart young people, and I think they've had enough of this PC culture. This here's how you're supposed to live crap. And you're the tip of the spear, my friend. So thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank
Really
you for joining us
appreciate
on USAWatchdog.com.
My pleasure, Greg. Thank you.